Welcome back to the show on CUBN. Glory to the King. We are in our Revelation study, verse by verse, in chapter 14 of Revelation. Let's hit it. We're getting into chapter 14. When we left off last time in chapter 13, we were talking about the mark of the beast in verse 16. And he causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man. We know who he is, don't we? Pope Francis. And his number is 603 If you take Vicarious Filii Dei, which is his title in Latin, and you use the Roman numerals on it, it's 666. So the popes have been antichrists for quite some time. Now let's get into chapter 14. And I looked, and lo, a lamb stood on the Mount Zion. I love Mount Zion. When I went to Israel, we stayed on Mount Zion. That was the coolest thing ever. And with him 144,000, having his father's name written in their foreheads. Now notice the sixth seal has been opened. Okay. Satan has been cast down previously. The Antichrist is causing all to take the mark. And the evacuation has occurred by this point. So now what we're doing is we're looking at what happens after the saints leave at the midpoint. And so you have the 144,000. Now notice Israel is blinded until the fullness of the Gentiles is come in. So as you have the rapture taking place, as the king arrives, probably September 2018, at the Feast of Trumpets, last Feast of Trumpets, and we won't know the day or the hour on that until we get to that point in time. We can give you a month and a year. We do think it's September 2018 when Jesus will show up. Looks like the temple, the abomination of desolation would be the 9th of Av, which would be July 21st, 2018. You have the blood moon, the center blood moon of the triad, which would be the indicator for your sixth seal, July 27th, 2018. Then you have the Lord descends from heaven with a shout, with the voice of the archangel and the trump of God, and you have a war in heaven, okay? And the powers of the heavens are shaken, and Satan is cast down. There's a war in heaven for about 6 weeks, and then as Satan is cast down and Jesus shows up in the clouds with power and great glory for his glorious appearing, probably in September 2018, somewhere around there, okay? But this part in chapter 14 is after we leave. You're looking at the 144,000 standing on Mount Zion, and then an angel has sealed them with the seal of God. And since we've already left, their blindness has been lifted, and so the 144,000 are able to see that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. In verse 2, and I heard a voice from heaven as the voice of many waters, and as the voice of a great thunder. And I heard the voice of harpers harping with their harps. And they sung, as it were, a new song before the throne and before the four beasts and the elders. And no man could learn that song but the 144,000, which were redeemed from the earth. These are 12,000 of each of the 12 tribes of Israel. And those are detailed in Revelation chapter 7. These are they which were not defiled with women, for they are virgins. They're young Jewish male virgins. Okay? Fly bugging me. These are they which follow the Lamb whithersoever he goeth. Now they are like disciples to him during this period of time. They don't have a life. They follow Christ 24/7 as disciples. These were redeemed from among men, being the first fruits unto God and to the Lamb. These are the first fruits of the Jews. Okay? Now, in their mouth was found no guile, for they are without fault before the throne of God. These are Torah students, probably, these young Jewish Torah students, who they love the God of Abraham, and once the blindness is removed, they are able to see his son, Jesus Christ, is the Messiah. And in verse 6, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Now notice, these 144,000, they are going to evangelize the Jews. But what about the rest of the people on the earth? Is it too late for the Gentiles once the fullness of the Gentiles has come in? I think it's too late for them to be raptured. But anyone who is left behind here has another chance. Okay? That chance, I believe, is detailed in Revelation chapter 3, where he says, I know your works, that you're neither hot nor cold. I would prefer you were hot or cold, but because you're lukewarm, I'll spew you out of my mouth. Lukewarm means no passion. You're indifferent. He hates that. Okay? He prefers that you hate him than to be indifferent to him. He said he prefers you to be cold or hot rather than lukewarm. Okay? So it says here, what this is indicating is that the church who was evangelizing the world is gone now. The Gentile church. Okay? And so now the church is not here to evangelize the world. And without the church to evangelize the world, I'm sorry, these bugs are really buzzing me here. And that bugs me. Bugs bug me, okay? Now you've got, with the Gentile church that evangelized the world evacuated, you have an angel flying in the sky that has the everlasting gospel and is preaching unto them that dwell on the earth and to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. Well, there is our answer. There's our answer right there, Shirley, that we were looking at earlier. She and I were wondering about whether or not it's just the Jews that are evangelized after this, when the second half starts, because the fullness of the Gentiles have come in the rapture, right? But this is saying that it's not just the Jews. It is, in verse 6 here, this angel has the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on the earth, to every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. So they're still preaching to Gentiles as well. Now, I think what happens is that the Gentiles have to give their lives, okay? All of those that are still here, you have multitudes that give their lives for Christ during the second half of the tribulation period. And I think many of those are Gentiles, because there's only 6 million Jews in Israel now. The 1/3 remnant would be 2 million, right? That's not multitudes and multitudes, according to the scriptures. And then you have a ton of people that are being slaughtered for the faith and refusing the mark during the second half. Those aren't just Jews. They are also Gentiles who are opting to die for their faith rather than bowing before Lucifer and taking his mark. In verse 7, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come, and worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. We have to keep in mind who is in charge here. Who is this all about? It's about Jesus Christ. God incarnate. Sorry, I haven't felt well since I got here to Southern California, guys. I actually had to break down and go to the doctor and get antibiotic and steroid and all this, and I'm still got this stuff in my head and my chest. The climate here is a killer for me. I don't have allergies in Oklahoma, but I come out here and I'm just, a mess. Okay. Now, it says here in verse 7, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment is come. This is where the wrath comes. And you've got trumpet judgments, 7 of them that take up the second 3.5 years. And worship him that made heaven and earth and the sea and the fountains of waters. We need to reverence God. Remember who you're talking to when you talk to him. Don't ever express yourself to God in anger or frustration. Remember who you're talking to. You don't ever lash out at him. Ever. Okay? you remember who you're talking to and show the appropriate respect. In verse 8, and there followed another angel, saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Now, I think that is Rome right there, okay? Now, Rome, we know Rome is going to be destroyed. We know that Damascus is going to be destroyed. But those are the only two cities that we are certain of that are going to be destroyed. Now, we know that most major cities along the coastlines will be, as you start getting into the trumpet judgments and you have these meteor that hits the ocean and you have these tsunamis all over the place that kill millions. But this point right here, this is telling us that Rome is not destroyed until the second half. Okay? Now, what's really weird is that Rome is destroyed at some point, and we were thinking that it was before, that it's while the temple is being built. Now, it's possible. It's possible. Because it's looking here, you have these angels. Third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice. You've got a second angel. Let's look at here, saying, now this, in verse 8, this is where Rome is destroyed. Now, since we're talking about the second half, it's possible that Rome is destroyed after we leave. After we leave. It's possible. But either way, the Antichrist is going to defile the Jewish temple. Even if Rome is still standing, he's going to defile that temple at the midpoint. That's where you have your abomination that causes desolation. But it looks like here, it says, followed another angel saying, Babylon is fallen, that great city, because she made all the nations drink of the wine of the wrath of her fornication. Now that is the Vatican, I would say. The third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand. Now this is the warning from God in chapter 14, verses 9 through 11, that tells what is going to happen, what kind of punishment is going to be dished out to those who take the mark of the beast. In verse 9, and the third angel followed them, saying with a loud voice, if any man worship the beast in his image, and receive his mark in his forehead or in his hand. Pay close attention. The same shall drink of the wine of the wrath of God. You are going to be here the second half, and you are going to wish you weren't, which is poured out without mixture. That means without being diluted. You don't want the full measure of the wrath of God on you. Poured out without mixture into the cup of his indignation. Now this is upon those that take the mark. They will be dealt with in a way with the fullness of God's wrath, and you don't want that. And he shall be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels. If you take the mark of the beast, you are going to be tormented with fire and brimstone in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. That means you cannot take the mark of the beast no matter what. You cannot take any kind of chip, electronic tattoo, anything in your right hand or in your forehead. So you don't want any kind of a tattoo, any kind of a chip, anything like that. In verse 11, and the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever. Listen and pay attention and learn. Do not take the mark of the beast. You cannot take the mark of the beast. You have to prefer to die. Okay? And they have no rest day nor night, who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Now this is interesting in that it says they have no rest day nor night. Now I've seen these articles that are talking about this new technology that can keep you from dying. I think that's what we're talking about here. I think some of the appeal of the mark is that you can no longer physically die. But it's also saying They have no rest day nor night. Now, this is while they're still alive. This is before they ever face the judgment, okay? They have no rest day nor night. It looks like those who take the mark of the beast. This technology is capable of enslaving you through hypnosis. It can hijack your mind. It can turn you into a drone at the push of a button to where you'll do what they want you to do, but you'll have no memory of it. Kind of like hypnosis, okay? But what this is saying is they have no rest day nor night. I think what happens is that those who take the mark are no longer able to sleep because their minds are hijacked. Their minds are going to be going all the time because they're part of a collective in their minds. It's like they're put under hypnosis and they're never released from it. Okay? So they're going to do what they're told to do. Their mind is hijacked. And they are unable to sleep anymore after they take the mark. And that's wreakage. You know how miserable you would be if you can't sleep anymore? Do you know how fast your body would deteriorate if you were unable to sleep or rest anymore? And what's going to happen is their bodies, after those who take the mark, they won't be able to sleep and they won't be able to die. Those things are denied them who take the mark. So just imagine how fast your physical body would decay if you can't sleep ever again. They will end up being kind of like zombies, okay? They'll be alive, but their flesh is rotting off of their bones. They're dead, but they're still stuck in their body and walking around. It's really bad. I mean, ooh. So they have no rest day or night who worship the beast in his image. Don't bow before that wimp, Lucifer. He's a wimp, okay? He's our God's pet devil on a leash. Don't bow before that wimp. Prefer to die first. Because if you bow before him, you give up your inheritance, your eternal inheritance. And your eternal inheritance is very, very valuable, okay? Don't even think about it. You prefer to die and hang on to your inheritance rather than handing it over, because this technology will enslave you. It will hijack your mind. The word says that you lose your soul. And the reason you lose your soul is your individuality, your personality, the things that make you, you, okay? If you're hypnotized, you're not reflecting the things that make you, you. You're obeying the voice of the hypnotist, aren't you? There is no you while he's in control. There is no personality, no soul, while someone else is in control of your mind. And that's, I think, why it says that you lose your soul. This technology is so amazing that it can hijack your mind like hypnosis, and they will not give it back to you. They can seize control of your mind, and they won't give it back. Like a hypnotist on a stage, can hypnotize you, cause you to bark like a dog and cluck like a chicken, and then they release you and you don't even remember you did it. Well, it's kind of like that, except they won't ever release you. You'll be part of a collective hive mind of evil and assimilated into it, to where you can't think for yourself anymore. You don't get to express your personality or anything like that. You just do what you're told, like a drone. And that's the danger of this technology, because it's not that God wants to deprive us of some really cool new tech and new way to pay our bills and all that. It's not that at all. He's warning us because this technology is capable of enslaving us if it's in the wrong hands, and it is in the wrong hands. It's in hands that cannot be trusted with this kind of high-tech device. I mean, if you take I know there's a lot of preachers out there saying that the mark is not, that the chip is, an implanted chip is not the mark. Well, don't take any chances, okay? Don't let anything be inserted on or in your right hand or your forehead. That's crazy to play with fire like that. And if it's not the mark, if the mark is an access code that is added to the chip at some point down the road, and you refuse to take the access code and bow before Lucifer to receive the access code, if you're chipped, they can kill you by remote control. Make them hunt you down the old-fashioned way, okay? Make them hunt you down the old-fashioned way. Now, let's keep going here. In verse 11, the smoke of their torment ascendeth up forever and ever, and they have no rest day nor night. And we talked about how they can't sleep, they can't die. Who worship the beast in his image, and whosoever receiveth the mark of his name. Here is the patience of the saints. These are God's children. Here are they that keep the commandments of God and the faith of Jesus. They will not take the mark. And don't you take it either. Because at some point, it's going to put the hurt on you not to take it. They're going to want to mark you in your hand or your forehead as a form of identification that is both permanent and positive. And Obama's already said it. Those who don't want to be identified are going to be criminals. It's not that we don't want to be identified. We don't mind giving them our driver's license, our fingerprint, our birth certificate, all the normal things that you use in today's world to identify someone. We are law-abiding citizens. We want to obey the law, and we don't want to defy the government. But we have to, once they come out and cause the mark to be mandatory. Once that happens, I think it'll probably be after we leave. Hi, honey. I think it'll probably be after we leave before it becomes mandatory. Think about this. We've got about 2 years and 2 months until what our research says is most likely the return of the king. 2 years and 2 months is not long enough from this point because for the mark to be mandatory before we go at the midpoint. Because I'm sorry, these both are really bugging me. There's only 2 years and 2 months. The economy still hasn't crashed yet. Now, when the economy crashes, it's not going to be a rise in the new system the next day. These things come in ripples, and then you'll have the rise of the new system, the introduction of the mark, and those kind of things. And it takes time to integrate these things into the world. And they've been working on it. But I don't think 2 years and 2 months from right now is time enough for them to crash the economy on a schedule, to introduce the new system, and then fully integrate the mark into the world in the beast system, and far enough to where they could require it to be mandatory within 2 years and 2 months. I don't see that happening. It seems pretty impossible, really, at this point. I mean, sure, things, remember, things don't move fast in our world. They have a progressive kind of nature to them as they unfold. And since the economy hasn't crashed yet, I think that there's just not time for the mark to be fully integrated before we go. Now, I think there's probably time for them to mark a lot of people, all of those who will volunteer for it. Remember, most people are going to volunteer for the mark. They will think it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, seriously. What would you think if this guy shows up, Stay Puft, claiming to be the Messiah, right? And he's got this technology, and he tells you, you'll never die. They're not going to tell him they can't sleep anymore. Okay, they're not going to tell them how things really are. The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He doesn't come and tell you the truth. Okay, the word says that those who take the mark can't rest anymore. There is no rest for them day or night, and death will flee from them. They are not permitted that comfort. So get it in your head. You cannot take the mark of the beast, no matter what. No matter what. Okay? Now, let's take our next verse here. And I heard a voice from heaven saying unto me, Right, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from henceforth. Yea, saith the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works do follow them. So it's going to be, it looks like it's going to be Gentiles and Jews that are dying for their faith in the second half of the tribulation period. And I looked, and behold, a white cloud, and upon the cloud one sat like unto the Son of Man, having on his head a golden crown, and in his hand a sharp sickle. Now he's going to reap the earth, okay? And another angel came out of the temple, crying with a loud voice to him that sat on the cloud, Thrust in thy sickle and reap, for the time is come for thee to reap, for the harvest of the earth is ripe. We are a harvest. Did you know that? There's a harvest of the tares in the fourth seal, and then you have a harvest of the wheat in the second half. That will include Gentiles who die for their faith and Jews who finally understand that Jesus is the Messiah, and they will follow the King. He that sat on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. Did you hear that? The earth was reaped. And another angel came out of the temple which is in heaven, he also having a sharp sickle. And another angel came out from the altar which had power over fire, and cried with a loud cry to him that had the sharp sickle, saying, Thrust in thy sharp sickle, and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, for her grapes are fully ripe. Wow, we're going to have to cut it off right there. We'll pick up again at chapter 14, verse 19, tomorrow on Tuesday, once again from 5:30 to 7 Pacific, and that would be 7:30 to 9 Central and 8:30 to 10 Eastern. I love you guys. Thanks for joining me today. God bless you. And should the Lord tarry, we'll see you here, there, or in the air. God bless you, and do right and risk the consequences.